All right, in this video, I'm going to show you how to create a line plot using Google Sheets. The data that I'm going to work with is global mean temperature. So this is data that originated from NASA. They collect temperature readings globally and produce this global mean. I found a data website, datahub.io, where they make this data easily accessible as a comma-separated value file. So I downloaded that data and pulled it into Google Sheets already, so I've got my starter here with that data in it. So you can see this data has three different columns to it. I have the source, the year, and the mean temperature. So for the source, you can see there's two different sources. So that DataHub website combined two different ways that temperature is gathered from two different sources. And so you can see the two sources are intermingled together. I've got this GCAG and I've got this GISTEMP, and they alternate. And I've got a reading for each of these per year. And you can see I've got lots of years worth of data if I scroll down through here. So my goal is to plot, do a line plot showing the global mean temperature per year. So along my horizontal axis, I want each of the years, and then on that vertical axis, I want a line plotted year to year showing the mean temperature. And for this, what I want to do is focus on the GISTEMP, and I'm going to set aside the GCAG data. So I'd like to really get this GISTEMP data out of here and summarized. So to do that, I'm going to use a pivot table. This will let me separate out this intermingling of the GCAG and the GISTEMP. So I can click anywhere on my data here, and I can go under Data and select Pivot Table. And I'm going to put that on a new sheet and click Create. And for me, it says Pivot Table number 4. So I've got my original data here on the data sheet, and then I've got a Pivot Table 4 sheet. And it's ready for me to start defining the rows, columns, and values for this. So first off, I'm going to define the column. So what I want to do is separate out the two sources. So for my columns, I'm going to select source. Okay, and it's automatically going to find all the different values that are in source, the GCAG and the GISTEMP, and create columns for those. I'm going to turn off show totals because I don't need totals for what I'm working on. Now, I'm also going to define my rows. Like I said, I want the year for each row. So I'm going to add the year, and now you see I'm going to get all the years, and it starts at 1880 and continues on and on until 2016 for this data source. You can see I've got a total there as well, so I'm going to toggle that off. I don't need totals for my line plot. I just want years and the GISTEMP. So the last thing I need to do is now fill in this table with the values that I care about, and I want that to be that mean temperature. So you can see now I've separated out my two sources, and so I can focus in on that GISTEMP because that's the one that I want to plot. All right, so I'm going to now highlight the rows that I want to plot. So I'm going to click that first value there, the 1880 GISTEMP, and I'm going to scroll down, and I'm going to click down here. I'm going to hold Shift so I can select a range of cells, and I'm going to click on that last, the 2016 temperature. So that by holding Shift and clicking on that last cell, I've now selected everything in between, and I have those cells highlighted. Now I'm ready to plot that data. So I'm going to go to the Insert menu, and I'm going to chart that data. All right. So Google Sheets has created a chart. It happened to pick the line chart as the default. All the different chart types are listed under this drop-down for this chart, but it's already got the one that I'm looking for. So I'm pretty happy about that. For me, I like to have my chart on a sheet of its own. So I'm going to click this little menu, and I'm going to move this chart to its own sheet. All right, so that lets it take up the whole screen. It can be nice and big, and I can see my data plotted. Now I'm going to refine this. What I'd like to do is see all the years listed down here at the bottom of my chart. All I'm seeing is the vertical axis with my mean temperatures. So I'm going to edit my chart, clicking this button. I can see I've got a series here representing these temperature measurements. I need to define my x-axis. So right now, the only data that I can pick from is those cells that are originally highlighted. So I actually need to expand my data range. I want more cells in consideration. So I'm going to add another range of cells that I want to consider. I'm going to grab those from the data, or actually from my pivot table. I want access to all of these years. So I'm going to click that first cell. I'm going to scroll to the bottom. I'm going to shift click. Now I've got another range of cells that's available to my chart. All right. So now I can see that I've got two ranges of cells available to me. I'm happy with my first series, which is my temperatures, but for my x-axis, I want to add that A column, that year data, to this as my x-axis. So I've done that. Now I can see my years are showing up. So I've got 25-year increments here for that horizontal axis. I'm going to clean this up a little bit more. I'd like to have, let's see, I'm going to edit my chart again so that let's see, is that working? It's not working for some reason. I'm going to edit my chart. Let's see if it'll let me. There we go. Now I can edit this label. I'd like this to say something a little more descriptive. Global mean temperature from GIS, NASA GISTEMP. Okay, so that looks good. I think the final thing is I'd love to have more definition to more detail to my years here. 25-year increments is pretty big. So I'm going to go over to customize this chart a little further, and I'm going to scroll to the bottom of the things I can customize. I want to add more grid lines. So I've got those 25-year grid lines right now. I'm going to update that. I'd like grid lines every 5 years. So for that major step, I'm going to change that to 5. You can see that's been updated now. I've got 5-year increments down here for my years, and I can see what's going on with that temperature over this pretty long period of time. So that shows you how to take some data, some time series data where we've got this temperature from year to year. We used a pivot table to separate out our two different sources for temperature data, and then plot as a line plot that temperature over time, and you can see the trends associated with that data.